Hey there, Mr. Carey. It may just be you and I. It may be nobody, but I'm going to put this video out nonetheless. Um, just for reference, this is from history.navy.mil. Hey, hey. Oh, hang on. Let me copy, paste this in there. What's up, Scott Amo? How are you? I hadn't even been to bed yet. Okay, so since people want to be dumb, I wanted to do this before I go get some sleep. Getting bear toddler anymore. I know I shouldn't give him the time of day, but anyway, let us go over. Hey, Oshin, how are you? Uh, good. Good working. Working on Todd over there and Brick, that dummy. All right, so this is from the Naval History and Heritage Command. This is their story on the USS Liberty. So they can suck it, really. This is the Liberty listing a bit. What's for lunch then, right? I gotta make some breakfast and then try to get some sleep. All right. So, trying to scroll on the wrong screen. So, with a decided starboard list, the USS Liberty ATGR 5, accompanied by the guided missile cruiser Little Rock, excuse me, limps toward the port of Valletta in Malta for repairs following the attack by Israeli torpedo boats and aircraft. A little bit of misnomer it will get into, but the helicopter hovering over the bow of the ship is removing the wounded and dead to the attack carrier America on 6 June 1967. So this is Historygram, attachment 1, by Samuel J. Cox, the director of the Naval History and Heritage Command. 8 June 2017. So the USS Liberty's mission was to collect intelligence on activity along at Morning Lola, or still going from yesterday, if you're some of us. The north coast of the Sinai Peninsula. Although Liberty was a U.S. Navy ship with a mostly U.S. Navy crew, its mission was in support of the National Security Agency and Joint Chiefs of Staff tasking, for example, a national security mission, not a Navy mission. Let's see. Which at the time resulted in a convoluted chain of command. The Six-Day War broke out between the time she was ordered to proceed to the eastern Mediterranean in response to rising tensions and the time she arrived on station, but 13 to 17 nautical miles off the northern Sinai coast on 7 June. Liberty had Arab and Russian linguists. First mistake. Embarked, including Marine Corps and NSA civilians. Was it a mistake? But no Hebrew linguists embarked, including, let's see, no Hebrew linguists. Her designated patrol area was out of VHF UHF collection range of Israel proper, but she could monitor and collect, but not understand in real time Israeli military activity in the Sinai, which had commenced with the Israeli preemptive strikes on 5 June. Remember this, everybody was moving towards Israel for the 6-day war. And so this is why Israel preemptively struck in a defensive posture, in an offensive posture to defend themselves. And I know how Todd is going to frame this, try to frame this. So again, this is the official U.S. military history, U.S. naval history. So suck it. On 5 June, at the time of the attack, she had been transiting westerly for 6 hours. Liberty was armed only with 4 50 caliber machine guns intended to repel boarders. At the time, the fact that Liberty was an intelligence collection ship was classified. She was officially designated as a general purpose auxiliary technical research ship. That's why it had the AGTR designation. And she carried GTR 5 freshly painted on each side at bow and stern. 5 messages originating in Washington, changing Liberty's orders and instructing her to approach no closer than 100 nautical miles from the 13 to 17 to the war zone were misrouted or dropped. But I mean, Mr. Carey, you've been listening to me long enough to know that I'm not gonna say something without knowing where it's going, right? None were received by the ship until after the attack, or were not received at all. Liberty received a message just prior to the attack directing her to take a referenced Joint Chiefs of Staff message for action. The reference message directed the 100 nautical mile standoff, but had not been received by Liberty. The massive and multiple communications foul-ups were a major embarrassment to the U.S. Navy, which at the time had no interest in this fact becoming widely known. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations had also made public assurances on 6 June that no U.S. ships or aircraft were operating within 100 miles of the combat zone. So the fact that the Liberty was well inside the radius was a major embarrassment to the State Department. No one in a position of significant authority was held accountable for the communication errors, but the event did lead to congressional investigation and a subsequent massive overhaul of U.S. Navy communication systems and networks. Sorry, my throat is about closing up from the strep. Um, In the very early morning of 8 June, an Israeli Air Force propeller-driven aircraft, a Nord 2501, flew a standard dawn maritime reconnaissance mission on behalf of the Israeli Navy, which had no organic air capability. The aircraft located the ship 0558, and it was correctly identified as USS Liberty by an Israeli naval intelligence officer when the aircraft landed. Liberty was then plotted as a neutral on the situation board at Israeli naval headquarters in Haifa. By late morning, the contact had gone stale and, in accordance with standard operating procedure, was removed from the plot. Another mistake. And most of this information was omitted, of course, because Oshin, it kind of takes the it doesn't make Israel look as bad. I'm not saying they had some failures. Obviously, they took a neutral contact, but they couldn't find it. It gone stale, and they took it off because that's what they were supposed to do. However, the fact that a U.S. ship was out there did not survive an 1100 watch turnover following an investigation and pretrial hearing. The responsible watchover was not referred to trial. So nobody on the U.S. side, nobody on the Israeli side was brought to trial. I mean, I don't know. Josh was in here. How many briefings did one little thing slip that could have turned a whole lot of things into bad things? I'm not saying it's not a tragedy. I'm saying that both sides have culpability here. And nobody wanted to admit they were wrong. Other Israeli aircraft flew in the vicinity to and from Combat Air Patrol, or CAP, and ground attack missions in the Sinai throughout the morning. These flights did not report on Liberty since it was not their mission, but were observed by the ship and have since come to be erroneously reported as additional Israeli pre-attack surveillance assets. So again, more comes out. This was in 2017, right? This is when this was released. In the early afternoon of 8 June, Israeli army forces in the vicinity of El Arish reported that they were being shelled from the sea. An unidentified gray ship, Liberty, could be observed on the horizon and was presumed to be the source. Okay, so shelling, they saw something, they thought, okay. At that time, Liberty was operating about 14 nautical miles off the coast. They were supposed to be 100. And at least one massive explosion and other smoke near El Arish were observed from the ship at 1300 as a crew commenced a general quarters drill, which concluded at 1345. At the time, the Egyptian army had been driven well out of artillery range, and the Egyptian Air Force had been destroyed on the ground in the initial Israeli preemptive strikes on 5 June. Whether the explosions were the result of sabotage or some other activity remains unknown, but they certainly were not due to any action by Liberty. In response to the report of the shelling from the sea, the Israeli Navy was ordered to dispatch ships to intercept. 2 destroyers were promptly recalled, but 3 motor torpedo boats, MTB Division 914, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Moshe Oren, were ordered to continue at that time. Liberty was heading westerly in the direction of Port Said. held by the Egyptians at a slow speed under 15 knots. As the MTBs made initial radar contact with the ship at fairly long range, 22 nautical miles, due to atmospheric ducting, the Combat Information Center, or CIC, officer on the command MTB erroneously calculated Liberty speeds as 30 knots. By Israeli SOP, an unidentified ship transitioning at greater than 20 knots was presumed to be a warship and could be attacked. It also meant that the MTBs would be unable to make the intercept before the contact reached Port Said, which forced Oren to call for air support. Given the testy and competitive relationship at the time between the Israeli Navy and Air Force, it is very unlikely Oren would have called for air support unless he believed there was no alternative. In fact, the Israeli Air Force and Navy had only narrowly averted a potential catastrophic friendly fire engagement the previous night. 2 Israeli Mirage 3CJ fighters returning from a CAP mission over the Sinai were ordered to locate, identify, and if contact was a warship, to attack and the contact. In their initial standoff reconnaissance, the 2 fighters identified Liberty as a warship, painted gray and not Israeli. And the aircraft also identified the 3 MTBs to ensure deconfliction. The fighters also identified Liberty as a destroyer, which it definitely was not, because that was what they expected to see, since the only ships the Egyptians had that could have been responsible for shelling El Arish were destroyers or missile patrol boats, which even Air Force pilots could tell the contact certainly was not. For the flu, whiskey, lemon, and honey, and chamomile tea. At a safe distance and altitude, the fighters did not discern the 5 by 8 foot American flag nor the GTR 5 on the bow and stern and requested clearance to engage. After double checking with the Navy that the contact warship, which Navy headquarters verified based on the erroneous calculated speed, the Air Force controller cleared the fighters to engage. Got to realize the Israelis are fighting a war, though a 6-day war, a war nonetheless. And we're when you're in that footing, your tensions are high. They may not have been sleeping. I'm not trying to make excuses for the mistakes, but I'm trying to give you context of they were expecting to see, so they had this confirmation bias in their head. They see a gray ship moving at a miscalculated speed. It's a bad thing, right? There's a whole confluence of events on all sides that screwed this up big time. Not being where you're supposed to be, miscommunication, not communicating with somebody with your partner nation, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I understand it's an NSA ship at that point, really. So at 1358, the 2 Mirages commenced a bow to stern firing pass from out of the sun. Commander McGonigal had already ordered the machine guns, which were already manned as a precaution, to condition 1, because he did not like the look of the jet's actions and immediately called general quarters. Flying at a speed of a half mile every 3 seconds, each Mirage opened fire with 3-second bursts of 30 millimeter cannon fire aimed at the forward superstructure with devastating result. Before looping around for another pass, neither jet experienced any return fire, although not entered in the ship's log, but noted in the board of injury testimony. One sailor, GMG 3 Alexander Thompson Jr., did open fire and was killed on the second pass trying to do the same. The first pass ignited a fire in two 55-gallon drums holding fuel for the motor whaleboat and set the whaleboat on fire as well. The first pass either shot away the American flag or the halyards burned. Either way, the flag was gone by the second and third passes. Terrible, terrible, just terrible confluence of events. So the heavy smoke from the gasoline fire is rising straight up, indicating that at least at one point of the fire pass, the flag would not have been flying straight out. Even if it was, making out a flag from high-speed jet from a bow-on aspect would have been exceedingly difficult. The pilot would have been concentrating on hitting the target and then not crashing into the ship or the water in the 3 or so seconds after firing. Some accounts claim that the Mirages fired rockets. However, since their primary mission was air to air, that would have been very unlikely. They wouldn't be firing like AIM rockets, right? They would be just flying. They would have some kind of air to air missiles. That would have been very unlikely. The hundreds of impacts from high velocity 30 millimeter cannon were more than adequate to cause major damage throughout the ship. The first air attack concluded by 1404. A few minutes after the Mirage's attack concluded, two Super Mystery B-2 fighters diverted from ground attack mission in the Sinai commenced a stern to bow pass at 1407, dropping two napalm canisters each. God, what a terrible invention. 3 missed, 1 ignited a fire in the bridge area. The aircraft then looped around for a strafing pass on the beam, again inflicting severe damage with 30 millimeter cannon fire. However, on the second pass, the lead pilot noticed unusual markings, and the Israeli air controller officer in Tel Aviv was already becoming seriously concerned by the lack of any reported return fire. On the third pass, the lead pilot reported that the target had CTR-5 on the bow. The Israeli air controller officer immediately ordered a halt to the attack and ordered a third flight tasked against the ship. 2 Mystery 4 fighters armed with 500-pound iron bombs to resume their original ground attack mission in the Sinai. Their attacks were over by 1410. 9 U.S. crewmen, including the executive officer, the intelligence officer, had been killed or would die of their wounds. Although Egyptian ships had been known to use subterfuge in ship markings, they used Arabic script for names and numbers and not Latin alphabet. The Israeli air controllers concerned that Israeli aircraft might have hit a U.S. ship was quickly replaced by concerns they had hit a Soviet intelligence collection ship or an AGI. The Israeli fighter had misidentified GTR-5 as CTR-5, an easy mistake. The AGIs would normally be identified with CCB number, Cyrillic for SSV. This resulted in a flurry of reports up the Israeli chain of command. At 1424, Liberty sighted the 3 MTBs approaching at high speed. At 1417, Lieutenant Commander Oren had requested authorization to employ torpedoes, which was granted by the deputy commander of the Israeli Navy under the mistaken presumption that the contact was an Egyptian destroyer, since that was the only thing that could have shelled El Arish and be making 30 knots. The three MTBs caught up to the heavily damaged Liberty at about 1430. The ship was blowing heavy black smoke and obviously not making 30 knots, nor was it a destroyer to anyone with rudimentary recognition skills. The MTBs held short about a mile from Liberty while Oren and the skippers of the other two boats identified the ship as the Egyptian transport vessel El Qusayr. One junior officer under instruction expressed doubt about the identification. El Qusayr was superficially similar to the silhouette to Liberty. Although less than two-thirds the size, however, the rationale for why El Qusayr, a 1929 vintage horse and passenger transport, armed only with two antiquated 3-pounder guns, would have been anywhere near the location defies. Todd's going over this. Is he, Jess? Oh, fantastic. 3-pounder guns would have been anywhere near the location defies easy explanation. Nor could the vessel possibly have been responsible for shelling El Arish. The Israelis' MTBs did not see much larger 8 by 13-foot holiday American flag that had been hoisted over the air attack after the air attacks. Okay, Bricky, that's fine. I'm reading the official U.S. Naval History and Heritage Command, history.navy.mil. So documentaries are good. I'll give them that. Let's see, 3-pounders, El Arish. The Israeli MTBs did not see the much larger 8 by 13-foot holiday American flag that had been hoisted after the air attacks. Due to the fire, the flag was on the halyard on the opposite side of the torpedo boats and mostly likely obscured by the heavy smoke. The Israelis were also looking into the sun, and the GTR-5 on Liberty's bow and stern would have been harder to see in a shadow. Okay, recollections are whatever, Brick. You fucking idiot. The Israeli command MTB attempted to signal Liberty with a handheld Aldous lamp. Do you think that a signals intelligence ship who the Navy History and Heritage.mil, who has the records from the Israelis all the way to the Americans, would have more information, or a victim on a ship whose PTSD from the incident has to be enormous? I know you wouldn't believe in PTSD because you make fun of it all the time, you fucking idiot. But, shout out to Mr. Jones versus the state of New Hampshire. The Israeli command MTB attempted to signal Liberty with a handheld Aldous lamp flashing AA, the International Maritime Signal to identify yourself. The signal was obscured by smoke, and Liberty's signal lamps had been destroyed in the air attacks. Accounts conflict as to whether Liberty responded with a handheld lamp, but what the Israelis reported seeing was AA flashed in return. In an encounter with an Egyptian destroyer in the 1956 Arab-Israeli War, a then very junior Moshe Oren had seen an Egyptian destroyer respond with AA in response to an AA challenge from an Israeli warship. In the Israelis' mind, the identification issue was rendered moot when the Liberty opened fire as soon as they began to close. Commander McGonigal had given the order to fire, but immediately countermanded it after he saw what he interpreted as a possible Israeli flag on an MTB. However, with all communications destroyed except for shouting down from the bridge, a forward gunner got off one 50 cal round before hearing the ceasefire order. An amidships machine gun, to which there was no easy access from the bridge due to the fire, may also have opened fire. Or, much more likely, ammunition cooked off due to the fire at a most unfortunate time. Y'all see the confluence of events, right? It's not just one thing. It's one, the Americans were not where they were supposed to be because of communication failures. The Israeli Navy and the Air Force weren't talking to each other because they were having a pissing match. Uh, Commander Commander Oren was having an issue plotting speed, so he thought it was moving faster, twice as fast as it was. This is all these things that smooth brain people don't understand. Let's see. Lack of communication caused all of this loss of life. Yes. It started with the Liberty not getting or fumbling, remember, the messages to begin with. The ones that got through, we weren't carried out. They had no Hebrew interpreters on the ship, so they could hear everything that was going on. The intelligence was collected, but it could only be heard afterwards because there's a truly, Jess, truly. Yeah, I mean, they're there to collect intelligence, signals intelligence, and they didn't bring any Hebrew interpreters. They only brought Russian and Arabic interpreters. Sorry, I'm tired. So let's see. So, believing they were being fired upon and unaware that the commander in chief of the Israeli Navy had countermanded the torpedo launch authorization as soon as he was briefed on the situation, more lack of communication. The MTBs opened up and sustained a barrage of 40 millimeter and 20 millimeter and 50 caliber gunfire, which killed Liberty's helmsman, who had taken over from the helmsman wounded in the air attack. I had, Oshin, I said yesterday how I feel about Israel and BB, that he should be in jail. I mean, he's already been convicted of crimes before. But hey, Todd, you go ahead and keep on accusing me of war crimes, buddy. That's not actionable by any means. So let's see. They had then commenced a high speed attack run firing 5 of 6 torpedoes on the MTBs, which was armed. Each was armed with 2 torpedoes. Lieutenant Commander Oren did not even wait to set up a doctrinally correct multi-axis shot, and 4 of the 5 torpedoes missed, one ahead and 3 astern. One torpedo hit the intelligence space of the Liberty, virtually wiping out the entire intelligence detachment in the compartment at the time. The torpedo opened a 39 by 40 foot wide hole below the waterline, and the ship quickly took on 9 to 10 degree lists, as we saw as this began, right? Um, Fortunately, much of the blast was dissipated by a mainframe that likely prevented the ship from breaking in two and sinking immediately. 22 sailors, 2 Marines, and 1 NSA civilian were killed as a result of the torpedo boat attack. Another tragedy. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to put out the facts because people want to assign things to certain people because of their uh, national origin, right? Let's see. The apparent precision of the Israelis in destroying the intelligence compartment served as fuel for the deliberate attack on a known U.S. ship theory, which that does not explain why the other 4 torpedoes completely missed, as had every torpedo the Israelis had previously test launched. 67, the Nixon or Johnson? Johnson? Yeah, Johnson, I think. Yeah, he was president until 70, right? I don't know. My brain's not working. One of those two. Let's see. Oh, okay. After the torpedo attack, the MTBs came close enough to read the name on the stern, which even then was initially reported as Cyrillic or Russian. Released U.S. and Israeli transcripts of Israeli communication show a high degree of confusion within the Israeli Air Force and Navy about whether the ship was Egyptian, Soviet, or American. The MTBs realized their mistake about 1500 when they recovered a U.S. Navy marked life raft, and Israeli headquarters became convinced at 1512, following a close pass by a Israeli helicopter, which was the first to report that the Liberty was flying a flag and that it was definitely American. The MTBs had previously reported seeing a flag, which added to the possible Soviet confusion. The Israelis admitted and informally apologized for the attack and eventually paid several $1 million in restitution to the families of those killed. However, they balked at paying for the ship because they believed that the U.S. had erred in sending Liberty into a combat zone without prior notification. A compromise was eventually reached. Nevertheless, the apology and restitution were viewed as inadequate by much of Liberty's crew. I get it. Okay. They're mad, but their rhetoric can cause a lot of damage when rhetoric is not met with facts. I will not go into the myriad of conjectural theories as to why Israel would have chosen to deliberately and knowingly attack a ship of the only nation in the world that was standing by them at that point. The most prevalent theory is that the Israelis attacked Liberty to prevent the U.S. from finding out they were about to attack the Syrian Golan Heights. However, the Israeli chief of defense had already notified the U.S. ambassador and U.S. special representative of their intent to do so some 8 hours before the attack. None of the other theories stand up to rigorous scrutiny either. Because of the then classified nature of Liberty's intelligence collection mission, the initial Department of Defense press release deliberately contained false information, a definite don't do that lesson learned that the press and others quickly determined to be false, adversely affecting the U.S. government's credibility in the matter. In addition, the results of the Board of Inquiry and much official documentation remained classified for many years. As a result, the cover up conspiracy, the Israelis did it with malice aforethought, school of thought had a head start of over 10 years in disseminating their versions of events, which continue to impact the virtually every story done to this day, 2017, on Liberty. Of note, 2 days before the Liberty attack, U.S. Air Force jets mistakenly shot up the Soviet merchant ship Turkestan, flying a Soviet flag in North Vietnamese port in broad, clear daylight, and killed and wounded a number of Soviet sailors. The Soviets refused to accept our admission that it was an accident. Thank you, Lolas. One thing about the Liberty attack that has never been contested was the heroism of the crew, and I am not doubting that one bit. I get chills just thinking about the deaths of the Americans. I also get chills about the dangerous rhetoric against the Israeli government and Israelis for perpetrating some kind of massive war crime against our only ally at the time. The only people that would stand with Israel at the time was my home country where I was born, my country where my forefathers came from. So, but everybody can be proud of their homeland, right, Todd? You can be proud to be a Greek, a Viking, a Spartan, an Italian, but I can't be proud of my Israeli heritage because that's too much. It's too much for you. Sorry, I'm on my preacher's soapbox, like my dad taught me. One thing about the Liberty attack that has never been contested was the heroism of the crew in saving their ship and many shipmates. As the Board of Inquiry determined, they were actually as well drilled and prepared as possible, and they were well led by Commander McGonigal. As I mentioned him in my previous H-gram about the courageous actions of U.S. Navy sailors in the debacle of the fall of the Philippines and deep Dutch East Indies during World War II, sailors on even the most unglamorous, uncombat naval vessels can find themselves called upon with no notice to conduct the most heroic acts under the most horrific of circumstances. The sailors on USS Liberty more than lived up to the highest standards of valor exhibited by any combat ship in U.S. naval history and deserve our nation's gratitude for their exemplary service in harm's way. There have been many books and articles written about on the Liberty attack, and I have read most of them. There have also been a number of TV documentaries, and I've seen some of them. Almost all the books and documentaries have major historical inaccuracies, and many have an agenda. A recent book, Liberty Incident Revealed, a follow on to an earlier book by Jay Crystal, published by the U.S. Naval Institute in 2013, is the most thoroughly researched, has verifiable sourcing, and is certainly the most objective in the account that I have seen. Hey, Freddie, how are you? I wanted to cover that. Um, have a blessed day, Freddie. Oh, my leg's cramping. Been sitting in this chair too long. I don't know how certain people sit in their chair as long as they do, but I have definitely been online entirely too much in the last 2 days. Any questions that I might be able to answer? This document is actually the document I make my argument um, from, that I made my argument to yesterday with on my stream, and I made with Todd and the like. Todd and the like um, yesterday and this morning. Um, I don't I don't say things because I haven't read them. I don't quote books because I haven't read them. I may not have it completely memorized because brain shit. Um, yeah, I mean, I fired this up way way quick, Freddie. I got tired of listening. This was during the 6 Day War. Um, Israel had told the U.S. that it was going to happen. The U.S. deployed this ship, and the ship's initial orders were stay 13 to 17 miles standoff. But through a series of unfortunate events, and I'm not quoting Lemony Snicket, um, they were told to stand off 100. They didn't. They fumbled a lot of the messaging for it to stand off, and they just plain didn't get them uh, telling them to stand off. Um, they were they pulled some mirages off of combat operations. They were doing combat, flying combat, to go look at this contact that uh, ground forces were saying they were getting shelled from the sea. And the Israeli Mirage pilots misidentified the ship and were ordered to open fire. Um, I think I really think Commander Orrin was probably the most culpable out of anybody in the Israeli forces as far as that it goes. Um, on their side, because they were closest, they were within a mile. Um, it's a terrible tragedy. So many people lost their lives unnecessarily, and to undergo an attack on a ship would be something. I guess the only thing more horrifying to me would be a submarine, um, especially if you're down in the bowels on a super secret mission that probably not many people even on the ship knew what the mission was. Um, I just had to bring it up because it's the it's the spreading of misinformation, and that's how people get radicalized, right? Yeah, yeah, exactly, Cap. Um, so that was that. Oh, I wanted to bring something up. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. But that's a great article. I linked it up at the very beginning. I'll link it in the description. It's these are good if you're interested in naval history or anything. The histograms are great reads. Um, 6 Day War, yes, Scott. Stole plutonium and to give it to Israel and resulted in hope. Yeah, that's what it was. Scott Amo. Let's see, Todd, just come out of your sheets. Let's see. So James Stern, firefighter, whatever the number goes, tried to tell me that the U.S. Army doesn't have a fixed wing aircraft. So let's go. Let's go, son. Because I flew fixed wing fixed wing drones, rotary wing drones. So let's see what we got there. U.S. Army.mil. Uh, let's see. Can anybody tell? Is that a rotary wing aircraft? I don't know. I mean, that dummy Stearns probably knows more than me because he was in the Navy. There's one special electronic mission aircraft. Looks like a standard King Air. No, that's a King Air 300. Oh no, I have de Havilland 7, I think. Oh no, what is that? A Gulfstream? Mr. Carey. Dash 8. Thank you, Cap. We use that a lot in places. Is that the King Air? I can't. So that's a few of them. So let's see. The T6 trainer, uh, UV-18 and C-147. Oh no. C-12. What? The Army has a C-12? Oh no, James Stearns. What have I done? I've blown your whole world out of orbit. C-12, C-26, UC-35, C-20, and C-37. Life sentence. So, uh, again, facts meeting people just saying, trust me, bro. Let's see. What else did we play with? Oh, and James Stern also said that that foreign governments can't fly aircraft in the United States. Trust me, bro. I make a mean peanut butter pie. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Unless y'all want to go to sleep, I'm just freaking. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Oh man, yeah, we got to keep those Canadians out somehow. I mean, and I guess that's James Stern's solution is stop. I've flown this in the United States. I've actually flown this in every country in the Americas. Todd and Stern and James Stern. Let's see what else. Oh, I flew this one at Fallon Air Force Base. That's Top Gun. This is an ugly one. The Hermes. Bum, ba-dum, bum. Help if I did this. This is Thailand's. This land is your land. This your land is Thailand. I need sleep, y'all. I'm freaking punchy. So this one isn't quite as capable as the other ones. Yeah, Mr. Carey, I saw that. That one's I've got questions about that one because that was very weird. Thing came in at like a full on 75-degree angle. Oh, is that what it was, Cap? I mean, what it do? Just I mean, because it looked like it just came in just rocketing. I know there's a lot of video angles of it, so I need to look at it a little closer. But so yeah, I flew this one at Top Gun as well. Oh, and at MOTS one at Marine Corps Air Wing Training. So again, just stuff. Yeah, it was It was I mean, if it was on takeoff and it was a private jet like that, I mean, a Lear 35, would it hold that many people? Yeah, Jess, in Philadelphia. Let me see if I can bring it up. It'll get struck in about 2 seconds. But let me see. Anywho, I've been at this for about an hour. I'm sure Todd's having him a wonderful time with it. Oh, he's watching Candace Owens. So, all right, you guys. I will see y'all on the flip side. Thank y'all for sticking with me through this. I just wanted to put the facts out there. I mean, he's still spurging. I just I just see Todd throwing up two fingers. Yes, you did, Mr. Carey. Thank you. And I brought this up. I really didn't expect anybody to come over, but thank you. Ned is a liar. Oh my God, this is too fun. All right, y'all. Be good.